This is your moment. You have a minute. What are you building?
So essentially what Sizzle does is bridges the gap between online food content, grocery services, and CPG brands.
For some reason, people are paying you for this, and I don't fully understand why they're paying you.
Sorry, you're not the demographic at all. You're too old.
And we're generating 45,000 ARR.
My take is it's not a venture backable business.
You should be the spokesperson, honestly. That was amazing.
When you don't know where to go, we always rely on the map.
Yeah. You've raised how much?
About 5.5.
From who?
Andreessen Horowitz.
I know what a founder who's raised 5.5 from Andreessen sounds like, and I know what a founder who's never raised $1 sounds like.
All right, well, fake hello, Brian. This is going to be our second segment to an episode that we've been doing, a shoot we've been doing, hearing founder stories. We do want to do a little bit of a reintro here. I'm not going to reintro the feedback loop, but I want to reintroduce you as the person helping me give feedback today. You are the founder, managing partner of Collide Capital. You are an early stage investor who's also deeply embedded in the early stage ecosystem. At a high level, when you think about who you are in the context of 2024 venture capital, how would you define yourself?
An entrepreneur and founder myself. I think one of my favorite things to do with founders is get super tactical on fundraising. And one of the reasons I'm able to do it is because I'm out there grinding with them. Really, I decided instead of sitting at a venture firm and writing checks, I decided to jump off the deep end and build my own firm. And I'm very fortunate to have an incredible team. Some of my team is here, but also a partner who I believe has an incredibly complementary skill set to myself. And I knew that the two of us working together could provide really a full spectrum of resources and thoughts and collaborative opportunities for founders to engage and build their business. And if you speak to some of our founders, I think they'd tell you they look to us when they have big problems. And I think that that's a role that I enjoy playing as an early stage investor.
Next sweater, 2 a.m. coach.
2 a.m. coach.
With that, shall we welcome a founder on stage to kick off segment 2?
Let's do it.
Round of applause. What's your name?
Michelangelo.
That's an
The
excellent
second for the suffix.
Kind of fitting.
Yeah,
It's
thank you.
a second too. Okay, awesome. Fantastic. Well, Michelangelo, you have a minute. Are you ready to tell us what you're building? Get some
Ready to
feedback?
go. Been ready.
Go ahead. Awesome. Tell us. What are you building?
All right. So Daze is the most creative and fun messenger ever, period. Right? You say what you want and you say it how you want. I think what we're doing at Daze is we're reinventing messaging by making it more playful and expressive. The way we do that is we allow each user, or any user for this matter, to drag any message type. So a message type could be a picture, a video, a GIF, a drawing, into an infinite canvas-like mood board. Make it as big, as small. The way I like to describe it is it's Figma if it had a baby with iMessage. So the same functionality you would assume from a messenger like iMessage with the creative tools of Figma. That's it. That's what Daze is.
Under a minute. Good job. You still need that. You'll still need that.
Oh, there we go.
Interesting. I have maybe a question I'll start with, then I'm going to toss to you, Brian, for...
Yeah.
Did you have like the founder of Daze has to be doing
Absolutely.
that. Did you have a moment on tech Twitter like 6 months ago? I feel like
We've been going pretty viral.
Collage. Okay.
Since April, we've gotten like 30 million impressions.
Got it. So I definitely saw some people in like the tech Twitter crowd then like sharing collages essentially. That was part of a messenger. That was you?
We're on TikTok and Instagram. Maybe someone shared it.
Well, I say it because I think I saw your particular startup. I think I looked you up afterwards because I was intrigued.
Thank you.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just talk to me about the functionality. So
Do you guys want to see it? Want to play with it? I got
The one
it.
thing about seeing and playing with it, we can, but I recommend not.
Yeah, I'd rather.
All right, yeah, I could talk over it. That's fine. Yeah,
explain it
for
to
sure.
me. So I use an iPhone today. I talk to 15 to 20 people. What will improve about my day?
So let me just start.
Daze?
You're not the demographic at all. You're too old.
Okay.
Right now, we're kind of competing against Snapchat because the biggest text demographic is middle schoolers. People that their whole life, their whole social circle is through chat. So we're just having a more creative way for them to express themselves between friends or relationships. It's also a good app to talk to your crush, for example. So it's not about logistics and efficiency more than it is about being creative. What made Snapchat so big was the ephemeral pictures that led to a way of being able to interact with someone without really having to think about something to say. Just send a silly picture to someone and it instantly starts a conversation. That's what we're doing with kind of the free-form aspect of Daze.
Got it.
I think you cut off his question with your sharp comment, which it's fine to have the sharp comment. We might be too old to use the thing. I don't know that you actually want that to be true for something. Eventually, Snapchat is probably the one app of all of them that didn't get to an older crowd, but is probably the financially least successful, right? Every other Snapchat before Snapchat successfully achieved the valuations that Snapchat hasn't achieved by genericizing eventually to the older crowd. That aside, I still want to know the answer to this question. You know, the interaction element of it. I get the drag into a canvas, but what am I dragging into a canvas? Why? So, you know, get into that. You know, you can use the demographic if you want, but what exactly is the moment there?
So to answer your question more specifically, the whole idea behind the message piece, forget about the creative tools. We want it to feel as feature complete and as smooth and efficient as iMessage, right? So from that regard, you'll have everything. You have your pictures, voice, audio, text, whatever. Bubbles are where the bubbles should be, so it'll feel just like iMessage, equally as feature complete. The only difference is that you can, let's say you type something, hello, boom, it's a little bubble. I can grab that bubble and be like, hello, and now it's a big hello in the middle of the screen. And I could add little tiny hellos around it. I could put it in the back, put it in the forward. And
is that for me to see, or is that for the person that I'm interacting with to see?
Both. Everyone sees it.
Got it. So my responses to an individual then become canvas for a broader community of people?
No, since it's a messenger, you could do individual messages, you could do group chats. So it depends. If you're talking to your friend, it'll say, what's your name again?
Brian.
It'll say something like, Brian is creating, or Brian is typing. And then when you finish that creation, it'll pop up on the canvas, and then the user can, see it, obviously. If it's a group chat, same thing. You press on whatever it is that someone created. If it's a GIF, drawing, a picture, a message, and it'll tell you who made it, when they made it. That's about it. So that's how you know who made what in a group chat.
Got it.
How many people are using it today?
So we just launched our beta August 1st. We have about 500 people on the app, but about 120,000 waiting. The big launch is November 4th.
When I ran into it and we had that viral moment, what stage was it at then? You were just prototyping, but it went viral from a concept standpoint?
We pivoted. We did a calendar app with the same free-form functionality, and we understood that calendar plus chat doesn't work. People aren't as retentive with the calendar. So we were like, wait a minute, we just made this beautiful, creative, free-form canvas for the days, for like the calendar days. Let's just focus on chat because people spend most of their time chatting. So that was like kind of the retentive thing. So we pivoted about 1.5 years ago. And then building in stealth, we had a pretty decent iOS version, and we started making TikTok and Instagram videos with 0 followers, no advertising money since April. 1 video a day. And then after, 20 videos, one hit 3 million views. And then, that's it. We got 70,000 people on TikTok.
If you look at the 120 on the wait list, is it 6th graders, 7th graders?
It's 13 to 17.
13 to 17. And do you have any...
Middle school and high school.
Do you have provisioning or kind of reporting things that you were worried about from a communication standpoint around what they're sharing?
Terrified.
Yeah. So just
totally.
talk a little bit about that, because we've backed a company that's kind of run into some of the scrutiny that comes from how those kids interact with each other.
One of my main things, what I do day to day, is I do operations, I do a bunch of stuff, but the thing that takes most of my time now, which is honestly amazing, is I'm like a community manager.
Right.
So I have this stack where I could see all the messages, and we get so many. Like, I think a day I get anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 comments and DMs a day. Sometimes there's even more. That's a massive amount of people. And what I've noticed throughout, since April, is that there's really young people, like people that are 10, people that are 11, 12. And so that wasn't ever like, we never imagined that that was going to be the demographic, that young of an age group. So now we're reaching out to our VCs for advice, trying to get more like lawyers that could help us with policies and security.
You've raised how much?
About 5.5.
From who?
Andreessen Horowitz.
Here's a positives to the pitch. I think there's a story you should be telling to just get a lot of empathy from people who don't understand. Because I've seen the thing and I get it from like the young people are coming perspective.
Yeah.
And I think there's a really great story there. And I think it has to do with saying, hey, iMessage is great, texting is great, blah, blah, blah. That's how we communicate today. That's how everybody communicates today. But you ever notice, however, that whenever you want to send a GIF, when you want to send something visual, when you want to break out of the format of a text, depending on if you're messaging someone inside iMessage, that might already be default and convenient to do. You have to like click a button. Now you're in a different app or a different search format. Or let's say that you don't have the same phone as Android and iOS, even worse as to how that might translate. A lot of people are on WhatsApp and Telegram and Messenger to solve the problem of we do want more interoperability. We want to be able to send an image. We want to be able to send a GIF. Yeah. But all of that, it's still really difficult. And the messaging apps are so focused on text and structured information, but there's a new generation of folks that are even more expressive than the existing generation. They'll even more than us want to send GIFs and videos to each other. They're already native to the iPad and the iPhone by the time they're 5 years old. And all of these individuals want to communicate in free form. And imagine a Figma. Imagine a Figma combined with an iMessage that allows you to more visually express yourself without leaving the constraints of the messaging application, without having to use 3 other third-party editing tools, CapCut, whatever else, which kids do. And so that's the proof point already. They're doing the proxy, they're doing the hard work, but they want to express themselves. And we help them do that on this freeform canvas. And as this generation comes up and becomes more expressive, Daze is going to be the home for them to express themselves to each other.
I love that. You should be the spokesperson, honestly. That was amazing.
Can I have the glasses for the rest of this?
What's that? Yeah, go for it.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There you go. Can I mention something on that tangent as well? I agree with you 100% because I think that low key, indirectly, we're inspiring kids to be more creative. We're giving them Figma-like creative tools that designers would learn indirectly.
Yes.
There's background erase, drawing, overlaying, right? I've made some crazy, I'll show you later, I made some crazy creations on Daze, artistic creations. I don't even text. Sometimes I just use the notes and I make things. And it's made me personally, and I'm going to be 27, a very creative person, whereas before I wasn't. So I think for the newer generation, it's just going to empower them.
I have a niece and a nephew who I just sent, there was a thing that got really viral on Twitter that was, here you go. It was
right here.
8-year-old, I think, it was a parent posted a video, it was 12 minutes long, her using, I think it was Cursor or some AI generative IDE to build like a Harry Potter chatbot. And it was just like this moment where she's talking about how she built it. And it was really her, you could tell by the way she talked about all of it. And I sent it to my sister to be like, you gotta get the kids on this.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing you just said, the tools are changing, people need to adapt to it. That's like a sub-story, by the way. And you didn't say it in your pitch and you shouldn't. I think that's like a tertiary thing, but I love it because I think it's so true. I love it too, I think it's so
cool.
Another thing that's really interesting, I've met a couple different founders who are kind of far along in their journey too, so this is also validated, who are building kind of like collaborative experiences. So Antimetal comes to mind. It's like cloud infrastructure, cost control and optimization that like has a Figma basis to the idea of like everything should be a canvas where it's multiplayer and it should be in real time, right? Even our B2B tools. And I think that's another theme that, again, might not be part of your initial pitch because your initial pitch should be demographic specific. But I think mentioning some of these things and because social pitches in general, right? The thing is like, okay, is it going to work? Is it going to be good enough? Is Nikita giving you advice, right? Like, can you get the hook? Or go away with that and say, here are the features, here are the things, here are the trends. So we're really well positioned. We don't need as much luck as everybody else does. There are 5 or 6 canonical categories and trends and zeitgeist elements happening to this that we're taking advantage of.
I love that. Can I mention one more thing real quick?
One more thing, and then I want to hear Brian's thoughts, and then
Yeah, so on the kind of, your guys' demographic, my demographic, one of the things that I actually kind of came up through kind of testing and research is that it's like an easy to use website builder. Like it feels like that. Like you could literally make your own little thing very quickly. For mock-ups, like my engineers were using it to show multiple mock-ups on a group chat, and they're like highlighting it, like this is the problem. And I just found that very interesting, even though that's not the main use case. But for them specifically as power users, they found utility, in the freeform aspect.
You lied
of
to
it.
us earlier. We are the demographic.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe.
I think there's power in the collaborative nature of that Figment design, right? And I think that's something that you could continue to almost describe it as a wave that you're riding, right? And you're bringing that to a generation that maybe hasn't experienced it yet. I think my takeaway is Snapchat's really good at what they do, and so Duolingo style, there's people who are fighting to keep streaks that are 2 to 5 years long at this point. And so I just think a little bit about, when you're describing this to people who don't have $5.5 million in the company, how are you helping them understand why people are going to shift their behavior away from a tool that they've used that I think also gives them creative experience and gives them the opportunity to feel like they're interacting and engaging outside of just messaging. How are you going to shift them away from their friends, frankly, at first, right? Like it's Daze will take time to get to critical mass where 17 out of 20 of their friends are on the app. But in the early days, what's that certain thing that gets them to adopt?
Couldn't help myself.
Yeah, that's a good question,
Something
by the way.
to think about.
So I think that
I'll give you like a 10-seconder on this one, and then we've got to, for the sake of time.
I think that Snapchat is really good with the ephemeral photos, whereas text hasn't changed in over a decade. That's what we're transforming. So they'll come to us because there's nothing else like us. I think in that space,
there's
in that regard.
Something I might recommend there, because I think the answer that a skeptical person might give you to that is they can build some of what you're building once they see it into their system. But I think your better version of that is to suggest what happens first. It's not just what you have or don't have or what they focus on. And it's like, well, when you log into Daze, the first thing you're on is our canvas. That'll never be true on Snapchat. Snapchat is user. You might also have a user list too.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this is your specific answer, but suggesting like how the experience is different from Jump is how you can differentiate and say, look, they're going to be on here first because Snapchat's always going to be a user list that starts with text, even if you can get to a canvas. And it's always going to be about ephemerality related to that canvas. With Daze, you're on collaborative whiteboards with your friends, right? And so like, again, think about like just how that hook might change that. But thanks for sharing.
Awesome.
Appreciate
I got
it.
something for you guys.
Nice.
A little goodie bag. You guys can share a little booty
Awesome.
Love it.
emoji.
Here we go. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much,
Thanks,
guys.
man.
Thanks, Michael.
appreciate it.
Good luck.
Mission-wise, the mission you're on, you and I were talking about this beforehand. I care deeply about like the founders that we get on stage and helping push all stories forward, but more deeply than that too, I love when we get underrepresented founders on stage, when we have people who might not have access to an accelerator, might not be the Stanford grad, might not have already made it to the point where they get to tell their story and get the access to opportunity. You have either founded, helped found, continue to contribute to and lead organizations that are tackling this in a bunch of ways, and I really respect that.
Yeah.
Where do you think that is right now in kind of tech and VC in 2024? Where's it going? Let me leave it there.
Yeah. Appreciate that, first of all. We do a lot of work to help marginalized communities, Black, Brown, female-led teams. 83% of the Collide portfolio is led by an underrepresented founding team. I believe a lot of it's exposure, and I think what you're doing is incredible here. You're putting people in a situation that they might not otherwise be in until it's real, and for better or worse, this is a mock. This is the pitch before the pitch, and I think it's giving founders a real opportunity to tighten it up and to get feedback, because unlike the technical founders that are building, I do this for better or worse all day. And I know what a founder who's raised $5.5 from Andreessen sounds like, and I know what a founder who's never raised $1 sounds like. And for what it's worth, I also compare those things. Mm-hmm. And so I compare the founder that's raised $5.5 to the other founder that's raised $5.5. I try my best not to compare apples to oranges. I think that's also important to do. But for the founders who have not had a rich uncle or had a buddy raise $30 million and don't really understand what it's like in these rooms, we try to bring exposure, and we try to give them the opportunity to feel what it's like, so that when they go to do it for real, they've been there before. And I appreciate the work that you're doing as well, because I think that that's what this does. It gives people an opportunity to get prepared for the big leagues, so that when they get there, they have the best shot to tell their story the right way and the most effective way, to hopefully get them the money to then go build the thing that they want to build.
Appreciate the kind words and the work you're doing. And I want to say this feels to me like it goes back to your story of you and your family as athletes. Practice.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know the value of that iterative practice so well.
Yeah. Pattern recognition.
Yeah.
You know, doing the reps.
Yeah.
Getting the reps in.
Building the muscle.
And building the muscle.
As someone very non-athletic, I relate to it, and I deeply think that it applies to our industry. So appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. Shall we welcome the next athlete up?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Round of applause. What's your name?
Dylan.
Dylan, are you ready to give us your minute pitch? Tell us what you're building, get some feedback.
Hi guys, my name is Dylan Mehta, and I'm the founder of Sizzle. So Sizzle started with one core question in mind. I was scrolling on TikTok and I saw an awesome pasta rigatoni recipe. I'm like, I want that item for dinner. So, and it's not just me who wants to eat that pasta rigatoni recipe. 1/3 of all the content on Meta is food related. So essentially what Sizzle does is bridges the gap between online food content, grocery services, and CPG brands. So we launched 3 months ago. We launched our B2B. 2 weeks ago, we just launched our app and Chrome extension. And currently we're growing at a rate of 70% month over month, doing 25K monthly revenue. And we're raising capital in around 2 weeks. The one stipulation that we put on our raise is that you have to be a user of Sizzle to join our raise. Thank you.
All right. Well done. Keep that mic.
Yeah, I was intrigued by the fact that you're making revenue, because I didn't hear too much of a pain point in what you were describing. You know, I think about myself scrolling. I might want that pasta, but I can think of 16 different ways I could get it. And maybe you could get it to me in 6 seconds, but DoorDash will get it to me, you know, in a couple hours. Uber Eats will get it to me in 17 minutes. Like, I'm not sure I fully heard too much of a pain point being solved. And so maybe walk me through some of the pain point that you're solving and maybe why people are paying you for it.
Yeah, so basically we're partnered with those grocery services. So we're partnered with like Amazon Fresh, Whole Foods. So we're sort of like an intermediary platform that's plug and play. So for example, you see the video on TikTok and then you say, okay, I want to shop that recipe, and you can choose Amazon Fresh, Whole Foods, who to check out with, and then kind of off-road you to those platforms.
So if let's say the pasta example you're using, you're taking the 19 components that I need of that recipe.
Bundling the ingredients. And then,
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So I didn't hear that in your pitch.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I would say. I heard a little more of like convenient delivery, you know, efficiently get someone who's hungry food quicker. Mm-hmm. I would spend some time explaining how you're taking sophisticated recipes and using some technology in the background to understand the components of that recipe, and then identifying, whether it's through inventory management or partnerships that you have with available grocers, how to get the person all of those ingredients in as efficient a manner as low cost as possible.
Okay.
So maybe spending a little bit more time on what exactly you're doing for the customer and why the grocer is excited to partner with you on it. I think because I hear a little bit of what it sounds like is you're kind of increasing basket size, right? Like they would have come and just bought milk, but the reality is they needed 4 other things for that.
Exactly.
And you're actually the person who helped them understand that they needed that, which is why the grocer is now excited to onboard you.
Yeah.
So it's like helping me understand the incentive for that 25K that people are currently paying you.
And we operate on order flow. So for example, our revenue structure is that we make money through affiliates, subscriptions, and integration fees. Like last month, we drove around $300K worth of dollars to our grocery partners.
How does that work? Like who's sending you order flow?
So basically, whatever recipe website, CPG brand that we're running campaigns with, or even on our app or Chrome extension.
Does it still have to be a bundled item in that moment, or is it also for individual items?
It's for everything. So bundled item, individual items, whatever. For the B2B
Payment
side.
for order flow business. Like I feel like this is a Robinhood pitch. I I want to say something about what Brian asked you or said about your business. There was a moment of delight I had. I love when I find these, and I think founders should find more of them, where you said the basket size thing.
Yeah.
Like that was like a, oh.
Yeah, right. That's
Whoa.
why that's why, I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
you want me to feel that way earlier than my question.
Exactly.
Is what I would say. Like, that is why they're paying you. Just to be like very clear, like they're not paying you because they enjoy people
New
coming
recipe.
to their, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like I would spend some time really like, at least even for yourself, just like, why the hell are they paying me? And then helping me understand that way sooner.
Because everything else about this, he was surprised by revenue because this is a pitch we even had somebody else up here with a food pitch earlier. And so like, it's about, okay, this is gonna be really hard to get even the grocers to care about. They're being sold 1,000 things already. Are you gonna be able to get them to change their behavior? But then you say something like, well, actually increases their basket size. Think about the consumer who comes in and only buys an item at a time, doesn't know what they're gonna build, so doesn't buy what they need, buys it from a second source, or they started shopping at Fairway, but then they got the thing they missed at CVS. There's so many dynamics of the grocer incentive there that you say, hey, we're just gonna change the way this fundamentally works. Also, and related to that, this is where essentially that payment for order flow thing is super interesting. I keep calling it that. The order flow element to it, essentially what you're saying is those people can monetize more effectively. How much more likely am I going to go back to a restaurant or an influencer or whoever else if I can also easily buy off of them? It's really inconvenient and people complain, I get 1,000 ads when I'm on this website and I can't do anything and I've got to take this list and I can't save it here. I'm going to bookmark it in Chrome or whatever it is, and that's messy too. But you're saying actually we're going to make those pages actionable. It's kind of like live stream shopping, which still hasn't caught on in the US that much, but like it's the same core concept that it's caught on elsewhere.
And that's exactly our go-to-market strategy around our app. So basically, what we tell content creators, and content creators we are not paying any content creators, but content creators like millions of followers are reposting us on our socials, and we're giving them a commission every time someone drives a successful checkout on their recipes.
So how much gross volume are you doing right now in a month?
So this month, it just will depend, but
It's early.
Yeah, last month we did 300K. We're estimating around like 400K for this month, yeah.
Maybe to walk through the affiliate model there, because it sounds like there's like 4 different people getting a piece of everything. And so like, where does your margin start today? Where does it expand to over time?
So it depends. For groceries, it's up to 5%. For CPG products, it's up to 30%. And then for cookware, it really depends, up to 40%. So we basically are kind of building like a more foundational model hooked up on a RAG and vector database. And it just allows for like native searching within any sort of commerce platform.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Why do we get to RAG and AI? I missed
just
that.
describing how it's all like kind of connected together.
Wait, is there AI?
Yeah. It's a vector DB.
Oh, so you're answering this question by somewhat saying, what was your question again?
around
just asked
around the
the
margin.
affiliate model.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just where the business is.
And I was just describing like how it kind of all is interlinked within our own algorithm.
Why does the algorithm matter though? In the answer to that question.
The algorithm is key, especially for like the B2B side of things, because we need it to be completely turnkey for B2B, for the CPG partners we have, for the recipe publishers. So it's very like,
Well, what does the AI do in that moment?
it basically will allow any sort of recipe website or any sort of website to be integrated within the Sizzle platform, and within 70 lines of code have all the Sizzle capabilities.
Why does AI do that versus just like whatever you hard coded?
Because the issue is that there's so many items out there, it needs to be AI driven because
Oh, it's
there's
for the
different
creation of the recipe.
the creation of any, just the linking, right? The linking, like for example, you have an item, right, and it's very specific, so we have to make sure that's accurate towards the recipe, towards a CPG product, towards basically any sort of thing in that.
So
content.
walk me through one of your buyers who's, don't use their name, but walk me through one of the customers. They sent you a 25K invoice this month. What did they pay for?
Okay, so basically, it depends on the client needs. So we start with just discussing that. For example, it's a CPG brand, and they want to run a TikTok campaign. We can say, okay, we can integrate your TikTok, your CPG item with a recipe content, and then allow that recipe content to be bundled with that CPG product to basically create contextually relevant, basically items pushed to users.
So are you responsible for content?
Yeah.
So it depends on the creator. So maybe the creator has content. Maybe they need, help on the content side.
What if it's the brand?
Yeah. So
Are you responsible for finding the creator?
Yeah. So my co-founder, she actually used to run an agency for food content creators. So she has a lot
This reminds me of a business called Tastemade,
Yeah.
which is a media business, which doesn't do that well. So I'm wondering if you're doing a bunch of things for everyone, but really they're just paying you for the services of the agency component. So maybe help me understand why this is a software business.
Exactly. So our long-term vision is to basically not even be in the CPG space, but be in the social commerce space generally. So we want to be the middle layer of commerce and distribution. So every time we build out an integration, we make it completely scalable. So we don't just say, okay, this is your integration. We'll actually integrate on a services level to whatever platform there is, and then integrate it into that dashboard. So basically, we're kind of create a Zapier-esque, platform. Does that kind of answer your question, or
sort of?
Yeah.
I want to go back to just do a little bit of storytelling feedback as well. It's clearly early in what you're building. I would caution you away from using things like weeks when you're describing things. Like I think you said something like, in 2 weeks XYZ is going to happen, or we're growing 80% month over month, and you're 2 months in. I think a majority of the conversations you're going to have, especially because it still is honestly conceptually a little confusing how you're going to make money and how it's going to scale. You're going to get a lot of wait and sees. You're going to get a lot of people saying, this is interesting, and clearly, like, first, I'd include myself in this. Like, for some reason, people are paying you for this, and I don't fully understand why they're paying you, but clearly you're doing something that people are paying for. You're solving some pain point, but I want to see you get to 3 million of GMV instead of 300K. And so let's talk in 6 months. What you're doing when you say this XYZ is going to happen in the next 2 weeks is you're setting yourself up for failure. And so I'd be a little more pragmatic about how much you can get done with a small team in a short amount of time, so that you don't get like put down in the notes as having all these things done that you're going to do in the next 2 weeks, and someone talks to you in 2 months and you're like, we're about to do that thing. Because I think that is a little bit of what I heard was like, these things are all kind of right around the corner, and it's just the reality is you're still early, and I think that's totally fine, and you don't want to discredit yourself from achieving things in a scalable manner over the next, call it 6 to 12 months.
So for the weeks example, I said like we launched the app 2 weeks ago. So I should just say maybe like a month ago, or
I think he's saying more in the rest of your story. Like, I think the thing, it's like going to theory rather than like what's going to happen immediately.
Don't time box yourself. Right? Like, it's the same for me, right? If I'm raising money for a fund, people say, when's your final close? If I say it's in 2 weeks, they call me in 3 weeks, I probably still would have loved for them to be an investor. It's like, well, we're trying to close by the end of the quarter, but the market is interesting, and so we're going to do our best and see how it goes. Now they have me in their notes as probably closing soon, as opposed to closing in 2 weeks. Think the same way about how you're rolling this out. Like, the number of people who are jumping onto the platform, the GMV that's growing, like, I don't know that you need to say 70% month over month when you're 2 months in. Find other ways to get people enticed. We did 300K last month. We're probably going to do north of 400K this month. That's incredible growth, and I can do my own math in my head about how you're growing month over month, but it doesn't lock you into these numbers that then 6 months later might feel unachievable for you.
My biggest piece of feedback has to do with like sticking. And this might have to do with your business too. You have a lot of moving parts: the services, the grocers, the content creators. So maybe it's a mix of concept and pitch feedback, but like, I was most locked in when I understood this like buying integration that could happen at a grocer in a complex way, where you're allowing these basket sizes to increase, where you're allowing more intentional commerce. And I got most lost when we were in this zone of like AI, and the problem is not AI, right? Durag, have fun. But it's this notion of like, what's necessary to do the other portion? Changed for me, right? It was like, why is that necessary? I was like, basically, as you're answering that question, I went, why is AI necessary here? Why does he need to do retrieval at all? And you answered, but like, that's not a core part of it, at least in my head. It might be. But I would want to focus in that story around the relationship with grocers, around the relationship consumers have with purchasing, kind of these bundled items, around how you make that easy where it already exists, as opposed to where you create net new content. Now, you might tell me, and this was Brian's point earlier, of like, no, actually, a lot of it is coming from my co-founder, who's an agency person, who our content creators are a lot of our growth. then you might describe that as a go-to-market motion and separate that from your product innovation. And this is where I'd say like maybe a more chronological value story of like, here's what we're building, here's what we own, here's what we think the future is going to be. Because with all of these moving parts, I was kind of like, okay, how do they relate to each other? But it is super interesting. And again, I have to give you kudos, like a lot of food pitches, not that you're just a food pitch, but a lot of it's commerce, but commerce in like this category. It is hard to think that there's potential and there's a lot of interesting components here.
I agree. Word of caution, I would stay away from content creation wholeheartedly. I think getting into that, it's a really low margin business. It's not scalable. The brands get super needy. I've seen multiple businesses that got to scale there that really struggled. And so stick to this piece of kind of like fulfillment and order logistics, which is very messy. And you're coming in and helping solve that for big brands. I think that's a really interesting use case, and I'd encourage you to kind of keep pushing on that.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Cool.
Thank you.
A lot of food.
A lot of food. It's interesting because I think it's a hard category and it's a tar pit, right? Like I think that's the classic term used where too many people feel the pain points and they want to solve it. And we all like start our food startup, our note-taking startup, our gym startup.
Correct.
But it is solvable too, or there's stuff to solve within it.
There's stuff to solve, but you got to find a buyer, you got to find a willing buyer, and then you have to find a problem that you can get to scale before the other brands that exist care to fix it. And I think for a lot of these, what I'll call inefficiencies, they are not $100 million problems. They are inefficiencies, and all industries have inefficiencies. And so sometimes founders build with very myopic intention around solving some small inefficiency and thinking that that's a venture backable business. And I oftentimes encourage them to zoom out and say, why are the companies that aren't fixing this today, who clearly have very smart people making a lot of money thinking about this problem, why have they decided not to solve it? And why are you going to fix it before they can?
And that deep investigation might just also be a part of you exploring your product and your pitch.
Yeah. Doesn't
Doesn't mean the answer is going to be don't build it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Brian, are we ready to
Shout out to everyone that stayed.
Yeah, congrats to the crowd.
We're almost done.
And to give a boost of energy to this last founder who's going to give penultimate's the one we just did, right?
Yes.
Is this the ultimate pitch? That doesn't sound right. The final pitch. The final pitch of the night. Round of applause. Come on up. How you doing?
I feel very special.
You are very special. You're a final pitch. This is an excited crowd. We're excited about it. What's your name?
My name is Holly. I'm the CEO and the founder of WorkOnward.
All right, Holly, are you ready to tell us about WorkOnward in a minute, get some feedback?
Absolutely.
This is your moment. You have a minute. What are you building?
So my background is in HR and recruiting. For the past 10 years, I've been helping other people find the jobs, especially white-collar professionals. So I didn't realize how difficult and fragmented the recruiting industry is until I became a small business owner. About 5 years ago, I opened up the restaurant not too far from here, and I start to see the challenges of finding talent at my restaurant. So I decided to build a WorkOnward platform, and I bootstrapped it to build. Because one, I got so frustrated with using with all the HR tech companies, including ADP, and the workforce doesn't really build and meant to build for small business owners and the blue collar job seekers who don't have a cookie cutter resumes. Two, I was convinced if there's somebody has to build this problem, I live and breathe in this pain, so it has to be me. You know what I mean? So I bootstrapped to build our platforms. And about a year ago, we launched our product, and we already have 3,000.
That's about a minute. Don't worry, we're going to continue. Let's give you a round of applause. 3,000. Tell us more.
Yes. So we have about 3,000 users, including Catch Deli, Cold Stone, Chamber of Commerce. And then we have a phone interview scheduled with this franchise business owners who owns 25 locations. And we're generating 45,000 ARR.
Great. So what is, round of applause. I deeply believe in the problem. So the pitch feedback I'm going to give you, and also the question is like, I want to hear more about your solution to it, because you identified that you're experiencing it, you're qualified to understand it, the solution doesn't exist today. And I think anyone who has met a small business owner, especially a restaurant owner, a frontline company of any kind, has heard frontline companies talk about not only how hard it is, because it's always been hard, it has gotten way harder over the past 2 to 4 years post-COVID. So what is the solution? What is WorkOnward?
Absolutely. So I want to start from this. When you feel lost, when you don't know where to go, we always rely on the map. First to locate ourselves and then find the directions. So WorkOnward is a platform using with a map. So we're geo mapping and also artificial neural network, something similar to feedback looping, to make a connections between job seekers and hiring managers. So when you open up our map, you plug in the zip code and you can see all the mom and pop businesses near you on the map, and you can easily apply the jobs directly. But this marketplace doesn't happen until you have a two side of the coin. So if you're small business owners, you can also see on the map and then see all the local job talents who's looking for a job near you, and then make the matchmaking happening on the map.
I think you've done a lot, and in that first minute, again, just for the purposes of the exercise, a lot of what I think I would describe as validation that this is working, you skipped. And so you spent like 40 to 45 of your seconds of your minute explaining the problem. I think both of us actually already agreed maybe 7 seconds in that SMB retention and specifically employee hiring is extremely difficult. And so I would encourage you to get to the fact that Cold Stone is paying you money sooner in your pitch. My question for you is: Are you just solving hiring, or are you also solving retention? Because I think one of the massive issues actually is not finding someone to come do a week's worth of work, but it's getting them to stay there for a year, at least from my experience from working with small businesses. So maybe talk about which side of that coin you're solving and maybe why you chose one side or the other.
Absolutely. It's a continuum. We're building the product, and that's one of the reasons why we're fundraising. So we started with matchmaking process first, but once you hire, that's the real work start. Now you have to retain the talents, as you mentioned, Brian. So using with artificial neural network and the machine learning algorithms, really learning about this small businesses interacting with the employees and then building up the models.
Got it. And then just maybe a little bit on the revenue side. Are you being paid for placement, or are you being paid for the platform? Because you use the word ARR, which I think can be tossed around a little bit. And so is it actually a recurring revenue that you're being paid for software, or are you being paid for matching?
Better, both. So we have subscriptions, pay as you go, and then the marketplace is success fees.
Got it.
Where does most of the revenue come from?
Great questions. Right now, the most of the revenue comes from the success fees, because those business owners, their urgency is, the bartender just quit the job. What should I do? And then we have all the database in our platform that send the candidates.
Oh, so it's one of those. It's not all of them in combination.
Absolutely.
Oh, interesting. I at first thought it was like all of them, like a small subscription fee combined with a success fee. So that's interesting. Okay, I come from the world of white collar product building. For job seekers and recruiters, I've built a variety of tools for both sides. And there's one that's interesting that I want to tell you about, mostly to help accelerate your journey, and we'll talk after this too. But I think it's also, the reason I want to bring that up is because it will also improve the pitch. When I was at a company called Stella, this was pre-generative AI boom. The main thing we were building while I was leading product over there, it was an AI-enabled marketplace for white-collar work, specifically tech. We had Fortune 500s and all the big tech companies on it. And if you were rejected from a job at Birchbox, we would invite you, or Birchbox would invite you as part of the rejection email from Greenhouse. Hey, do you want to join the Stella network? And then when you accepted the invite, you were on our Stella platform, and we would use AI, primitive AI in comparison to what's happening now, collaborative filtering, to match you to other companies and jobs in that network and try to create the introduction. Didn't work for a variety of reasons, but I'll mention the most interesting test I ran while we were failing. Shout out to the people who will, I'm sure, come for me, who still are bitter about it. No, it's PE fixed. We did a frontline worker experiment. AT&T and one other company were businesses that had both, kind of the white collar and blue collar components, and they came to us and they said, "Hey, we kind of want you to solve this, but in the frontline worker world, because we as AT&T storefronts, corporate storefronts versus third-party franchise storefronts, we are always hiring. We leave our listings for a cashier or a technician or whatever up all year long, no matter if we already filled everything. We just want as many applicants. Our franchisees, one of the things they constantly, I don't know if that's all they're called, but I think it is, there are usually 3 or 4 in the same city of every corporate store. There are always so many stores. They close them down. They don't know how to hire. They're all allowed to hire however they want. They have their own ATS. They have their own agreements. Can we matchmake all of our applicants to AT&T corporate or to AT&T storefronts, including our corporate applicants, to all of these other ones? That'd be a huge unlock for them. They have hiring problems. This was the most successful thing the company did, was a pivot after I left to start actually, I left to join a startup and then wound up starting a free agency. The pool of applicants that was applying to corporate storefronts was immense, such that we went from AT&T to Hilton and we said, hey, they have too many. Do you also have too many? Yes. Do you also have people who could use these applicants? Yes. And so the thing that wound up working is we pooled all of these applicants, and I don't know exactly how this worked out over the long term, and said, all these frontline workers want to work. The retention and churn is really high. What if the marketplace could just be more liquid? If we're running collaborative filtering constantly to understand what skills are needed for that cashier job, for that technician job, can the technician do a bar back job? Can the whatever else do whatever else? It was really interesting as a problem space. I think you should get into that a little bit, because part of what's happening here is how liquid are those people? This goes to the churn. This might be the anti to your question, like you might enable more churn accidentally when you start because you're going to make people more liquid.
He doesn't want to be the bar back.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be the bar back anymore. Now he does want to be, at AT&T, whatever it might be. But like, I think that part of the story, as you know it, is really, really compelling to an investor, because essentially what you're saying is there are a bunch of these nodes that are unoptimized in how they're fitting together, and we're going to sit on top of them. The map is one interesting sorting and UX mechanism, but the other interesting mechanism behind it is we're creating a more liquid marketplace of these nodes.
Yeah. I think what he's describing is so what, right? If you get into 10 pitches, most VCs have heard some form of recruiting is bad and here's how I'm going to fix it. So the so what for you, right? Just really try to get deeper on understanding why there might be some unlock that you're creating, not for 2 small mom and pop shops in New York City, but for the entire country who all has this problem. Just really try to uncover that for yourself. What could get investors excited about what you're building, and why is right now the right time for that thing to unlock the market?
This is absolutely the right time, because with all the tech layoff situation happens, a lot of founders who shut down their startups, unfortunately, they started bakery. They started learning about the bartending. So we're really moving into more of a flexible gig work.
That feels temporary. That feels transient, right? Because it's based off of a trend. Those bakeries will shut down. Maybe that's a belief I have, but that feels temporary, right? Like his point was, how are you changing the world? Example. Right now, it takes, on average, I'm making all these numbers up, a frontline worker 3 months to find a new job that they're in for, on average, 4 months. That is clearly inefficient. In our version of the world, what we're really focused on is that first 3 months. We want to take that down to a week. We think it should be a week for a frontline worker who wants to work to find a frontline job that wants them to work for them. And that's the sort of, because the story about like there are a lot of SMBs, that's based on things you don't control. But the idea that there are these job searches and this matchmaking that happens super inefficiently, you do control that. One more question, the map thing. Why is that important? That's interesting.
So for the small businesses, you have to rely on the local neighborhood, including when you're growing up in a small town that, have a deli, that the business owners. And so like attracting those local talents within the location is important. I actually also wanted to mention about the timing part. We had this just random the barbecue restaurant sign up from North Carolina, and they found a cashier within 24 hours. And that recently happened about a week ago. So it is definitely, immediate problems to solve. And in terms of the map part, when small business owners are looking to hire, they're not really looking into the resumes, which school you graduated, what kind of experiences you have. They wanted to know, hey, can you actually show up on time? And can you continue to work?
Might be interesting for you to like double down on that thought. I don't know if there's studies or anything around this of like the closer frontline worker is to their job, the longer the retention will be.
I thought that was interesting as well. And I don't know how many other recruiting tools use geolocation. And so if the answer is a lot of them, then I would move away from that. If the answer is none of them use that, then I would double down on it, to his point. And so I think that map functionality was interesting. And so I would peel back a little bit of like, how interesting is it?
Well, this has been super interesting in general, so congratulations. Thanks for sharing. That was a good final pitch that got me riled up.
Yeah.
That's a problem space that's also, I think, right now, recruiting, frontline work, SMBs, all these sorts of things. This is a lot of fodder because ultimately over the past 4 years, 5 years, we've been very focused on fintech. We've been very focused on enterprise. I mean, people always target SMB, but I think there was this feeling from a lot of venture folk who are in B2B spaces, okay, you're never going to get your juice out of SMB. I always care about your SMB insofar as it gets you to be a startup that hits the enterprise. But companies that are really, really, truly about solving, and I guess frontline workers, there's the enterprise element, some of those brands she named were large. But I love how small or local this story stays. And I think a lot of VCs are starting to realize that's a little bit of a gap.
There's ways to do that.
Yeah.
There was also a little food in that. Did you notice that?
What was it?
Cold Stone.
3-4 food startups today.
We've had a lot of food.
Are we feeling a little hungry too?
I'm getting a little hungry. I think that's right. SMB's hard though, and so also I encourage.
VCs went away for a reason.
Yeah, I encourage founders to just think about total addressable market. Mm-hmm. It's a very overused term, but you really do need to explain to people why your business is going to scale to north of $50 million of revenue. Otherwise, you should run a nice small mom and pop recruiting shop or food tech business and not take money from people that need it to grow 10x over the next 3 to 5 years.
Force you to go enterprise.
Yeah, well, you end up with misaligned incentives. Yeah. And I think that's another important journey for founders to go on is to understand what type of capital they're taking. And when you're taking early stage venture capital dollars, there's an expectation around growth that needs to be fulfilled. Otherwise, oftentimes there's not dollars behind it. And so sometimes there's mismatch of founders who had a really good business idea that took it to the wrong industry.
Totally.
And so I always encourage founders to think about why the business they're building is venture backable and venture scalable.
And often that insight to your point about another industry, you can take the UX or the technology innovation or the logistics innovation. And if you play with it enough, you might also find something
absolutely
different. Brian, the takeaways from this segment of 3, what do you got? What do these 3 teach us?
What was your favorite?
Ooh, my favorite too. This is interesting. I think it's going to be the last one.
Okay.
What's the founder's name again? Holly. A little bit of a cheat being in my industry and my space.
Yeah.
But knowledge work is really unsolvable in a lot of ways. We are going into an area there was a Gen Z, there's a couple Gen Z portions of pitches, and you mentioned Gen Z future of work as one of your theses.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think we're screwed. The relationship of Gen Z to work is fundamentally flawed. Knowledge work is learning how to shrink itself and use AI rather than expand the pool of people that we can take into the industry. And so I'm fascinated because I think more people, whether we like it or not, will wind up in frontline work too. That is just going to be a growing sector for a lot of young employees. The matchmaking there is already so fundamentally difficult. It is also, though, more solvable than knowledge work matchmaking. So for example, right now, recruiters at any corporate are being inundated with AI resumes and have no idea how to hire anymore. We have no idea how to evaluate anybody and how much of that job will be AI, how much will they use AI. Frontline work is going to be there. Yes, we will have more robots, including from the founder who needs to build that robot. That might be my favorite startup of the night, by the way, the robot part. But frontline work is so fundamental and solving that will be so key no matter what. It's one of those companies that might stand the test of zeitgeist.
Yeah. My take is it's not a venture backable business. Recruiting will stay in recruiting, meaning it will stay in take rate. She will not see platform adoption and SaaS payment. She'll see people who are like Cold Stone, like Subway, will constantly pay for you to place people, but will never pay for a platform on a recurring basis. That's my experience with it. My
industry experience, by the way, does validate that. That's how
they pay.
Go.
That's how they pay. Yeah. And it doesn't mean you can't, by the way, it doesn't mean you can't build a nice business off of it. You build a really cool functionality around driving demand to your platform, which then inherently gives you access to a ton of supply and et cetera, and all of a sudden it grows. I liked Sizzle.
Yeah.
I liked Sizzle. I don't think he fully articulated what he's building, but the work I would do on Sizzle is I would call customers.
Yeah.
I would call every single one of his customers and I would make sure I deeply understood the pain point that he was solving. But I do believe there is something there to expanding basket size. And when you're in such a low margin business as these grocers are, finding some way to get people to spend $62 instead of $47 fundamentally change your business model. And I think there's something to what he was describing when I think about myself purchasing things. Very rarely, and I was trying to think through it literally while we were sitting here, like, what site do I go to where they tell me all the ingredients that I need at once and how I'm going to get them? And I just couldn't think of anything. And so
the weirdest, closest thing I got was like Blue Apron, Planted, and these startups that like delivered the ingredients.
Food delivery,
and really bad businesses in hindsight.
Yeah.
But like the fact that that's what my brain went to and
Yeah.
your brain couldn't find a website, like it is clearly
something about the unbundling and bundling that he's creating there, because it's a massive logistics mess. And so maybe there's something there.
maybe there's some sizzle.
Maybe there's
Well, Brian, this has been incredible. Real big shout out to you, because the insights and the feedback given to founders here, I think, has been fantastic coaching for them on their path. So shout out to you.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And a big shout out to all the founders, the brave founders who got on stage, told us their vision for the future.
Absolutely.
It was excellent.
It's a scary thing to do.
Scary thing to do and a hard path ahead for them. So rooting for them.
Yeah.
Shout out to the team of the Feedback Loop. You guys rock. Thank you very much. And my last shout out to the crowd and to the audience at home. But the shout out also is a form of an ask. If you enjoyed this, if you've enjoyed past events, if you've been watching and you've enjoyed it, your like, your subscribe, press the notification button, share. If you took a picture on social, tag us, send the podcast to 5 of your startup nerd friends. We're building this thing for builders, for people who are doing something really, really hard. And we want more of them to hear about it, more of them to come to this stage, more of them to learn from it. So any support is not only appreciated from this table, but I know from all the founders who are in the audience or have sent us messages and said, hey, the VCs like Brian have gotten on stage and given feedback, the stories and the lessons that this interaction enables. There are people from across the world at this point emailing me every day going, can I pitch from Nigeria? Can I pitch from France? When are you going to come here? When are you come there? I don't know if that's in the short-term future, but clearly they're watching and they're getting something out of it. So shout out to the crowd. And again, thank you for all the support. Have a fantastic night. See you next week. We do it every week, so come back. Brian, we'll have you back very, very soon, I hope.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you.